I'm New York Times bestselling author Brenda Novak, author of Face Off, and you are watching The Author's Voice.
This is Author's Voice, connecting authors to the world. I am Sonali, your host for Lit with Love, and we have with us today the very lovely and amazingly talented Brenda Novak.
Hello.
Hi, Brenda. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Brenda just braved the Chicago traffic to be here with us, and we're so grateful.
It's a little gnarly out there at times, I've found. I come from Sacramento, which doesn't have as much traffic. But I apologize. It was my fault we were late. I left in plenty of time, but then thought I had time to stop somewhere. And then the entire landscape changed on the freeways and made it more difficult. So I'm so sorry.
Well, not a problem at all. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope everyone can hear me. And if you were here when I was talking with no sound, please do not share that as a joke because I know I have this animated face and you had no sound. But thank you for your patience. We're here now and we're going to be discussing Brenda's fabulous book, Face Off, which is the third in a series and which is actually one of my first experiences with a romantic thriller of this darkness. And I have to say I was pulled in from page one. I was in fact almost reading my husband's ear off because at the end of chapter one I was like, you will not believe how she set this up. And it's absolutely unputdownable. So I'm so glad to be here to be able to discuss this with you, Brenda.
Oh, thank you for reading it. That was really nice.
Thanks. It is, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. It's $7.99 from St. Martin's Press, and you can order it on authorsvoice.net. Brenda will sign a copy for you. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, please feel free to ask questions in the comments section so Brenda can answer them live. Again, thank you so much for being here. And let me see, anything I've missed? No. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Brenda. Let's start with you. As I said, this was my first experience with a thriller of, and boy, I think you have me hooked. So you want to take us in by telling us a little bit about the book?
Yes, actually this story is about a psychiatrist. First let me just preface it is a little darker than a lot of romances, for sure. But I wanted to write, because I also write contemporary romance, small town contemporary romance, I wanted to make sure that the two genres that I were writing were distinct from each other. I didn't want them to fall sort of into this middle ground so that people could easily identify, oh, this is the sweeter, not quite as dark, although I do have some difficult conflicts in my small town romance. I also wanted to then make sure that the two were very distinct. And I think that was represented by the cover. I mean, this cover definitely shows you that this is not going to be, without suspense. This definitely shows there is suspense. So I think they did a good job in representing that. And what I guess makes this story kind of dark is she is dealing with so many villains, right? I mean, or there's a potential for unlimited villains if you think about it, because she studies psychopaths. And it's through the criminal justice system. It's at a remote facility in Alaska. And so she has, the opportunity to, or I have the opportunity as the author, to bring up a lot of the research, the cutting edge research that's going into researching these people. So psychiatrist Evelyn Talbot, who's the protagonist, studies them and is trying to figure out a way to treat them, because as of now you cannot treat psychopaths. The more they try and treat them, the more versatile in their criminality they become. So the recidivism rate is off the charts, and it actually gets worse, and they get harder to be caught when they are trained. So it's kind of interesting how without the conscience, they do have a conscience if they want one, they kind of can compartmentalize. And so she's learning all of these things through her research and through the research of others and a 20-year study of their lives, because she was attacked when she was only 16 by her boyfriend, as you know from having read the book. And he was not your typical person that you would think of as a criminal. I mean, he was this bright star, handsome, young kid, good athlete. And he had the support of everyone. Everybody liked him. So he didn't have an excuse, if you will, to behave badly. He was loved by his parents, and they actually sheltered him after it happened and got him out of the country. And so this poor woman has had to, had this terrible experience, had to go all these years wondering, I know there's unfinished business here. I know he's not going to be satisfied with the fact that I survived and that he will come back if he can. And they never caught him, so she doesn't know. So she's constantly having to look over her shoulder, and she doesn't know when, if or when, but she feels like there will be a when. And now in this book we have Jasper hiding in plain sight because he's made some drastic changes and because of the passage of time. So she can't easily recognize him in order to make it easier for her to see what's coming. And so we get, Face Off, I think it's aptly named because you have these two adversaries who definitely are well matched, and they face off in this book.
Yes, and thank heavens for that, because as I was reading, I was hoping that, because I know this is a series, and we'll talk a little bit about that emotional satisfaction at the end of each book, because I was like, if he is not caught at the end of this book, I'm going to be very sad and angry. But I mean, one psychopath is a lot in a book. And she has, 350 in that facility?
Right.
So right there, I mean, as a premise, that is, rife with darkness, because it's also very romantic, the book. So I don't want it to sound like it is nothing but darkness.
Her romantic counterpart is the only police presence in the town, Amrock. And I particularly love him. Of all my heroes, there's something about Amrock, that just his ruggedness, his what he goes through in order to support her, and what he's willing to do for his love for her. So I think that does make it very romantic. And I'm a romance writer at heart, so all of my books end happy and sort of have that feel of love conquers all. That's the theme that runs through all of them. So she has some bigger challenges than some of my other protagonists, but I feel as though she earns her happily ever after, which makes it even more rewarding for the reader. So at least that's my hope.
Absolutely, and we'll talk a little bit about Amarok, but I guess my question was, where did that even come from? That the idea of an entire facility with.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I switched agents at a certain point in my career, and he actually is used to representing suspense writers. He didn't have any romance writers. He'd never worked with a romance writer that I know of, and other than maybe a Christian romance writer. So he's in Tennessee. He's not in New York where most agents are. And when he met me at a conference, we really hit it off. I really liked him, was happy to have him as a new advocate for me in my work. And he said, I really, because I was writing romantic suspense already, but I hadn't done anything romantic thrillerish, not quite this far. This is just one step farther. And he really wanted me to write me a big, suspense book. And so I started trying to think of ideas, and I thought, when you do a series, especially with suspense, it's kind of hard because you're having to have one protagonist face a number of things. And realistically, how many things is one person going to run into unless they're in a situation like they're a police officer, or they're a private detective, or they're a psychiatrist studying psychopaths. So I thought this will give me an endless supply of bad guys if I want to continue the series. And they can all have different pathologies. They can, there can be a woman in the mix. There could be, a lot of different options for studying this type of personality disorder. And so I just kind of came from that. I wanted something that I would be able to continue to fill that pipeline with.
Wow. But all of the books leading up to this, Jasper is the main villain.
Yes, well, that's what's interesting. Is when they first start, she's always afraid that this is going to happen, but she's dealing with her current life and her work. So you kind of know in the background in the beginning what Jasper is up to. You get a little hint of it, but he doesn't become the predominant antagonist because she's dealing with other ones that she's researching. And then so he's kind of in the background. He's creeping up, he's creeping up, he's creeping up kind of thing. And then boom, here he is. So this is definitely his book, if you will, where everything that she has feared comes to a culmination where she has to dig in and really do something about it. But he was what spurred her journey to begin with, her experience with him, her desire to not be a victim and to protect other victims, to stand up and fight back regardless of what it costs her, which if you've read the book, it costs quite a bit because her commitment to this cause is something that is judged by a lot of people because, who wants to spend money on that type of thing, you know, and so government is spending money on her facility to find out this research. A lot of people think it's wasted or useless. They don't want the facility in their neighborhood, near their town. So it's controversial. Anything with psychology, it also runs according to trends, which is interesting. So there'll be big sort of support for a certain type of belief that we are behaving the way we are for this certain reason. And then that'll be completely upended. And then another wave of popularity, oh, no, it's because of this. So, you know, just like with psychopathy, it's gone through waves where, oh, it's all, you know, choice, and therefore it's a punishable offense, and we should punish them terribly. Then there's this whole biological link that's coming up now. Is it hereditary or heredity that's causing this? Is it, you know, something different in their brain, which she is studying? Is it, you know, and they're finding it's a combination of all these things, right? Your environment as well as some hereditary issues that come with, that they can actually trace through your lineage. And they do a lot of twin studies in order to establish this, because identical twins have the same DNA, and so they're able, if one turns out to be, you know, have some psychopathy problems and the other one doesn't, they're able to see, well, what happened to change that? So anyway, it's very interesting, all the research, and they're finding it's a combination, but that also means that there are people who are going to be adamantly opposed to you saying that there's any type of biological link, because that removes some responsibility, even if not all. And then the repercussions of that could be huge, right? So it's a fascinating thing to study. Yeah.
And Jasper is a complicated enough villain where you see that he is able to make choices up to a point, and then his biology almost kicks in.
Yeah.
And so to what degree he fights it is different based on how much pressure has built up. So
yeah.
You know, so
but they can resist if there's enough motivation. They don't feel fear the way we feel fear. They don't have that fear of getting caught, which is why the recidivism rate is so great. Yeah. But the ones that we catch are the failed psychopaths, right? So we don't know how many are out there operating that are either subclinical or, you know what I mean? So it's an interesting field of study. There's so much going on with it, which leaves me, you know, as a writer, gives me a great deal to work with when I write these books. And in a way, I sort of am Evelyn, in that my curiosity is insatiable about what causes this behavior and why we have these people and why they feel no remorse and why I feel such terrible guilt for stepping on a bug, and they can murder a human being and stash it, you know, in their backyard and go on to work and go home and see their family or whatever and still be just fine. Yeah. So it's really an interesting thing.
And almost turn it into an art, right? I mean, torture.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they get better and better at it. Yeah.
And the pleasure in it is almost to the level of refining your art, which is just...
yeah, it's chilling. It is really chilling. But I mean, I don't typically go into really dark sequences where you see him mutilate or torture or anything. I mean, almost anything that's too dark that I wouldn't want to read on the page is off the page, but I mean, you have enough details about him, I think, hopefully, to make him real and to believe in his psychopathy, so that the threat is real. Otherwise, the conflict wouldn't be fun, right?
Right, exactly. And but also enough layering, I think, in his character that's also backed up by choices, and you know, and him coming up against situations where he could go both ways, and that brings me to because he's one of the POVs in this, and being an unreliable narrator, right?
Right.
Because you have all of these narrators, and he is the one that every time he says, okay, this is what I'm going to do, you never know if he's really going to do that or just do an about face and do something completely different.
Right.
And so talk to me a little bit about writing a villain. Like, what is...
Well, you know, I think villains can be the most challenging simply because you do want to get the threat level high enough that you get that chill in the book that you're looking for, but you also don't want him to be a cardboard character. What bothers me most probably in some crime fiction is that people are bad just to be bad. Certainly, psychopaths don't have a lot of rhyme and reason to the stuff they do, or at least why they enjoy it. We may have difficulty understanding why they enjoy it. But they are, a lot of them, more capable than just thinking these evil thoughts constantly. They lead almost normal lives in other regards. Many of them, they have wives, they have children, they have jobs. Yeah, and he uses the women. I mean, because even in that regard, he's still a psychopath in that his needs come first. And so he uses these women to, you know, and what's I thought was most interesting probably was his relationship with his wife, to me, because it showed that while she loved him and she's trying so hard to figure out a way in, he's like a fortress, his heart, right? And she's trying to figure a way in to make him truly love her back, and she's trying to make this family work, and she doesn't realize that it's impossible. This man does not have the capability of loving her the way she can love him. So watching their marriage break down in the book was sort of one of the most interesting aspects for me to write, because I could see this desperation in this woman, or being this woman, and wanting so much to finally, I mean, he looks so good on the outside, he talks a good talk when he wants to, you know, and you're thinking, what's missing? What's missing? What am I not doing right? And because I'm such a highly responsible person, I would keep thinking it's me. You know, like, if I change this way, if I change that way, if I approach him this way. And so I would keep trying, I feel like, until I absolutely, you know, finally had to realize, but it would take me a long time. And so it's interesting to me to watch his wife, you know, kind of figure, what can I do? Like, she tries to be patient, she tries everything. And so then to watch that sort of break down, I thought was added to his character.
Evelyn is in love with him when she's 16. He's her first love, so there is that too. And she's an absolutely brilliant person. And so, you know, I mean, so it has very little to do with your own level of intelligence or anything else to be taken in by a person like this.
It's actually very easy to be taken in by them, because they are often the ones that are very, well, they're friendly and gregarious, because it serves their purposes, right? They're going out looking for what they need. They're parasites, essentially. Many of them. So they live a very parasitical life. And so they're looking for people, you know, to serve their needs. And so they are somebody that oftentimes they'll be the person you get to know the easiest and the quickest, because they're so, like, they mirror what you want them to be.
Yes.
But they are the people that then will hurt you the worst in the end, because they really don't care. They don't care.
Wow. Yeah, and he actually misses that too. He almost, well, you know, in it to the extent where he's able to miss it, where he's like, oh, I wonder what that feels like. This person is crying over something, and I don't have that. And so that's also.
Yeah, they can objectively or intellectually look at it and go, this is how I should be feeling. But even they, at least from the experience I've read, have wondered why. Why do I not feel that the way they do? So I actually just read a blog about a psychopath who, she's been diagnosed with psychopathy. She's never acted out in a criminal way. She talks about how difficult it is to maintain a relationship with her loved one, simply because she then has to cognitively stand back and say, I need to fulfill his needs. It's not something that she would intuit or that she would just feel sensitive to. So I thought that was really a great blog from somebody who, you know, not the criminal aspect, but somebody who actually has this personality disorder and dealing with it and trying to be constructive with it and still make her life work. So I thought it was fascinating.
Wow. So it is it's a disorder that you can also exist within, you know, within society with.
Absolutely. They say that psychopaths are actually drawn to certain vocations more than others, and you might be able to guess some of them, but one that really threw me was being church clergy. I would not have thought that the contradiction is so great there. Well, but yeah, they like the position of power. They like, I guess.
It's almost like being a therapist, though, right? Where you're dealing with other people's problems without having to get too involved in them. So I can see that, you know, them doing well at it. I would say therapists too, right? Because the psychologist needs to maintain that that division, right? Now, do you have a background in psychology, or
no? I don't.
Research?
No, just research for the book. I mean, I've always been interested in it, even as a child. Why we act the way we do, especially when it comes to bad behavior. Because to me, I understand good behavior, because good behavior is usually rewarded. You work hard, you make better money, you get better job. You know, I can see that working. But when you act badly, to me, it's just self-defeating. But some of them make it work for a short time. I guess maybe some of them make it work longer if they're the ones that aren't caught. But certainly, to me it's illogical to act badly, even though at first it seems like it better serves your needs because you get what you want now, but you're not building anything solid. So.
Right, and normally bad behavior goes, in fiction at least, goes with, and in life I think, goes with pain. Right, you're feeling pain, you're wanting to inflict it on people, so it really is this almost like this relationship with pain thing that's going on. But with psychopaths, that doesn't feature in there. It's almost almost scientifically experimental. How far can I push this? How, it almost is a whole different universe of behavior.
Yeah, it is. It's something that we don't understand very well, that we do need more research in, and a lot of people are doing that research. So certainly not alone in my interest. There are a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists out there who are breaking new ground, and we've had a lot of new interesting findings the past couple of years.
Is there actually a prison that studies, like, is this based on a real institution?
No, not yet, but maybe we will get one. I don't know. I mean, that's part of the story, is how she's had to lobby in order to try and get the support she needs, using her background in order to get, public support, to be able to get the public dollars to be able to open this facility. So she works for the, the federal FBP, Federal Bureau of Prisons. Yeah,
That's
sorry.
right.
I'm now writing, this is like 2 books ago, so I'm now writing a different genre, even different subgenre. So.
I know, and she has this built in Alaska, so the setting is also very much a character in this book. So it was, it's the perfect place for it.
Yeah. Well, you want to put the worst of the worst somewhere that you can kind of forget them. They often build prisons in places where it's not the most desirable real estate, and Alaska. So Alaska does have its challenges, but it's located close enough to Anchorage that they can, in the worst of circumstances, be air flighted over to the hospital if they have a severe emergency or whatever. So it is in Alaska, and it's in a small town, and it's outside of Anchorage, but they do have access to the highest population density is about 45 minutes away.
But, and no cell reception, all of that,
right.
which is almost impossible in today's world to do.
Well, you would
anywhere.
think so, but then since I started doing lives, I've traveled to authors' houses thinking everybody has internet, or and we're actually surprised by, even in where we live in the States, how there is not cell coverage in some places. It's very shocking. So in Alaska, it's definitely not unusual, but it does create a challenge for me, because you live in a world where you use these devices so often that it becomes very hard to forget. I have to in here go, oh wait, he can't call anybody, or you know what I mean. He can't use his GPS. He can't, things that we use. So
especially in crime now, it's so technology driven.
Right.
No, but it also, I think, in storytelling, we've lost a lot of plot tools and plot devices because of the because of technology and the cell phone.
Right.
It's like things we could have people wouldn't know, and now everybody knows everything
instantly, and you can call for help immediately. Exactly.
Right.
Sue Grafton, who was writing the Kinsey Malone series, she kept it in the 80s for that specific reason. You're probably familiar with that. So I thought that was an interesting artistic choice, from an author, to avoid the modern technological marvels that we have that help us do everything so instantaneously.
Yeah, because they don't help with with plot. Speaking of which, just the intricacy of the plot over the series, it's and the cast of characters is so live. You have almost, even when somebody just has a walk-on part, there's a fully developed character walking on for a walk-on part. And so tell us a little bit about the process of that.
Well, to me, I think each character needs to be valuable, or they don't need to be there. Obviously you have some standing characters that you may not even name, but you want somebody, even the characters that are surrounding the protagonist, to be interesting, to have their own challenges, without getting too caught up in it so that it takes away from the main story. Like, you want that main thrust moving forward, but you want them to enhance and not take away, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I have had fun creating these characters. In Alaska, you do run into some very interesting people. They're often there for a reason. Maybe they don't like crowds. They really want to be loners. They're a little more, I'll take care of this myself. I want this freedom. I don't want anybody looking over my shoulder. So you get some interesting personalities that you can create from those types of people, that gives books a change up, I feel like,
Right, and the whole, and that's why small town romances and small town stories are so popular, is because you can play with this cast of characters who all really know each other.
Right,
right.
And they know everybody's secrets if it's a small town, right?
And
so you get some of that in Hilltop too. I actually kind of combined some of my small town romance experience that I've had in the past. It definitely comes in here so that the characters, they do know each other, and they do, like for instance, when Amrock's girlfriend, comes back to town, yes, Samantha, and so I thought that was kind of a fun wrench to throw into things as far as the romantic conflict goes, because we've talked a lot about the suspense, but there is also, this romantic arc going between Evelyn finally learning how to trust again enough to love and to share the type of intimacy that kind of love requires, and it's something that she's avoided until this point and has completely thrown herself into her work, and that's become her love, if you will, what she thinks she's dedicated her whole life to. So Amrock is not a wrinkle that she's planning on when he enters her life, and so learning to trust him and to trust men again after what she's been through, especially because it wasn't just a random attack, it was somebody she loved who turned on her, somebody she trusted who turned on her, somebody she had already slept with, so she'd shared that type of intimacy. And so then to go there again, knowing, as she knows from the psychopaths she'd studied, sometimes you never know what they're really thinking. What they're showing you on the outside can be completely different, and she's had firsthand experience with that, and so it makes it really tough for her to trust again. So I really enjoyed doing the journey of how this woman would overcome that aspect of the attack to be able to fall in love and give all of her heart and body and everything again. And so, but Amrock, of course, is worthy of it.
Yes, so to create that, that's exactly what I was going to say, to create a hero of that worth, of that strength and stability. And through all of the things that they go through, I think the fact that there's this rock steadiness to the relationship, that's really beautiful.
Okay.
And I think, just creating a hero like that, it's like it must have been
Yeah, I really loved Amrock. He just kind of came to me so easily because he just fit the rugged Alaskan area so well. So, and I liked that he was a little bit younger, so that he wasn't a likely hero. He was somebody that she would kind of think, oh, no, not for many reasons. But of course, he is the obvious choice for her because of their immediate connection, as much as they fight it at first.
Right, and strength and stability really aren't always about age, and
right.
So that's
he's very mature for his age. Not that he's a baby or anything, but he has come into law enforcement earlier because of the setting and the situation. And he doesn't have backup. I mean, that's an unusual thing. But in Alaska, you do run into those situations. If you've been watching any of the shows, on Alaska lately, I've seen many. And it's interesting how some of these law enforcement officers have to go into pretty dangerous situations knowing we have no backup.
Yeah, he does have, like, Phil's kind of.
Oh, yeah, some helpers. He does have people. They're called village safety officers that help out. Because mostly what he's dealt with previously, that's what's so interesting too, is you kind of take a fish out of water approach with a lawman who previously the worst he had to deal with really were some drunken brawls at the local pub. He had, and hunting infractions, which are rife. So he's there to protect the wildlife, and then he gets this, prison that moves in next door essentially with these psychopaths.
Yes.
And for the first time he has to start dealing with crimes like maybe a murder or a kidnapping, which is way out of his realm of normal experience. So you get that, his learning curve has to be pretty steep, and you see him go through that.
And he also has, but he comes with this whole history of being native to that land, which requires real knowing. It's not it's not a stranger's land, right?
Right.
And so to have to deal with that light and that cold and all of that is...
Yeah, he has to be kind of natural to him. But I also wanted him to be sort of part of that land and part of that area, to the point that it couldn't be, hey, we'll solve this romantic conflict by just having him leave with you and go to Boston. I mean, Amrock can't leave Alaska. Amrock is Alaska. You know what I mean? So it's like, it makes it unthinkable for Evelyn to take somebody who is so happy and thrives and is so at home in this, to take him and put him in a big city. What would he even do? He would be such a fish out of water. So I thought that enhanced the romantic conflict.
Absolutely, and it is a very, it's not a conflict that you can solve over a conversation for sure, or even, some things are just so inherent. And it was one thing, I think, even as a woman, that I kind of, struggled with is, why is all the focus on the fact that she has to change her mind about where she wants to be and not him, but it's so organic to the story. And also the fact that her work is everything to her, and her work is now in Alaska, so that decision has already been made by her to change something so definitively that
she's so driven that she can't let go of this. Even as you read the story, you'll see the challenges that it poses for her personal family. I mean, they've been through enough. They're like, we're done. Let us heal. Stop bringing this back into our lives. And she can't. I mean, it's just such a part of her. She is so driven to fight back and to make sure that not only Jasper is caught, but that we get answers to this problem, that it makes a real conflict inside of her, because it's like, they didn't choose this, and yet they're sort of coming with me on the journey. Because you do that to your family, right?
Right. And she doesn't choose it, and yet she chooses it, and it takes the level of strength it takes is a whole, different level to be normally we see victims who are trying to move away. And I do get both responses from readers. I mean, I've had some mail where they're like, I can't believe anybody would, put themselves in this situation who's been attacked. And I just think, well, then you don't know me very well, because I would fight with everything I had till I died. Like, that's how determined I am inside when I get mad. So I think that she got mad, right? She got mad at what happened to her, and this is her way of turning that anger to a positive outcome. Absolutely, because, either you have to heal there has to be some, and that's what all of these books are about, is, right, your healing has to either be a fight back, or it has to be a letting go. And a combination of all of those things, and each one of us has to, and this whole concept that there is only one way for someone to be strong. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So you have to allow for how things impact people differently. Exactly. And I've found that through reader reaction. Some people are like, yeah, I would do the same thing, or I admire what she does, and others would be like, I don't believe anybody would ever do that if they'd been attacked. They would never want to, see a psychopath again, let alone deal with it. So, that may be the way they would react, and so they're projecting that onto the story. Yeah, and one part of me wants to say that we've seen a lot of that in fiction, right? We've seen victims as wanting to move as far away from that. But we also do see, in a lot of, especially crime fiction, both on television and books, where you have cops and people in law enforcement who are coming from a place of that anger of having been a victim once. Right, and so see, I did something sort of similar with my Last Stand series, which was previous to this, where I took 3 victims who had experienced violent crime and met at a victims support group, and then they started their own charity to help people who were falling through the cracks and couldn't get help like they were. So, it wasn't a brand new concept for me as far as the let's fight back, because I have personal experience with this, but it did come from sort of my reaction to when my son was diagnosed with diabetes. I had no idea what diabetes could do. It was so ubiquitous that I thought, oh, it's not that big a deal, until they sit you down and say, oh, well, this is going to destroy his heart, his kidneys, his eyes, and then you're like, oh my gosh, something's got to be done, So then I started my whole crusade against diabetes and doing all the fundraising. And please do talk a little bit about that, because I did want you to speak about the auction. Oh, thank you, yeah. Well, actually, I'm not doing the auctions anymore. I did it for 10 years, and it was like having a whole other separate full-time job. And I remember when I first started, I would lay awake at night and just hope and pray and dream about, if I could just raise $1 million, at least that would be significant enough that I would feel as though I had made an impact. So it was super touching to me that the readers and other writers and publishers, publishing officials, agents as well, who contributed to my auction. I mean, we're 2.5 times that. We're at $2.6 million. And so I feel very grateful, and will always feel very grateful to everybody who contributed to that, because it really was an army of the writing community that made a difference. It certainly wasn't just me. I provided a little bit of the vehicle, and everybody was more than generous in jumping on. So that has been a really wonderful thing, but it was that kind of fight back spirit that gave me the inspiration for both The Last Stand, and then when I came to this, I thought, that we would transfer that same type of fight and passion that I feel into this story. And it is. So we do have a question from a reader. This is from Facebook, from Layla Raybush. Thank you, Layla. She says she loved this one, but now she's ready for Blind Spot. So how long does she have to, and all of us have to wait for Blind Spot? Is Brianna going to be in there? Because her sister, Evelyn's sister. Yes, a little bit, not a lot, because the last chapter, or the last little part of Face Off, is a teaser for the next book, and so you'll see kind of what happens to Evelyn to kick off the next book. But
what was Layla's question again?
It was how long
Oh, how long?
before
A
Blind
year.
Spot comes
Sorry,
out?
Layla. My thoughts were going a million miles an hour thinking, oh, maybe I'll tell this. No. Okay, I'm going to answer the question first. But yeah, it'll be out next year, next September. And so we have a year. We've been doing one a year of the Evelyn Talbot. So.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you want to tell us a little bit about it quickly?
Well, Jasper is also a character in the story, but of course he's going to be playing a very different role. Once you finish this, you'll realize that his situation has changed. But because we've all come to get to know him, and I thought it would be interesting to show him in a different light, but would still highlight the psychopathic personality. So he is a character in the story for sure. He continues, but it's not quite as he's played in the past. Different. So she's facing some new things in Blind Spot that I can't tell you because the first chapter is sort of you don't know who's behind what happens in the first chapter, and I don't want to blow that until you learn it with her. So, but yeah, 1 year to wait for that, and then I'm actually up for contract with these books, so we will see, if we're going to do more with St. Martin's, if I'm going to do more later, if I'm going to switch over, because I also write for Harlequin, and I have some books coming out with them, and I still have several on my contract, and we're talking about some other exciting new things we want to do. So we will have to see, where it all shakes out here in the next couple months. So first, and I will make those announcements.
Okay, great. First, my mind's going all over the place with Jasper now. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we have to talk about this. But tell us the next thing that's coming out.
After this book, I have Before We Were Strangers, which is a trade paperback. It's coming out from Harlequin. It is a standalone, which I haven't done for a long time because I've been busy with my Whiskey Creek, my Silver Springs, Evelyn Talbot. So it's kind of fun to go back to that and not have to think on a bigger scope, a bigger arc, and just put everything you have into this one book and see how people like it. But this one was actually a really fun one to write. It was inspired by a Dateline episode where I was watching this woman who doubted her father. She thought that her mother had been killed by her father, but she wasn't sure. And he raised her. Her mother disappeared. They found the mother's body in their backyard. So sure enough, he was guilty. Well, this really got into my head, and I thought, what would it be like to have these feelings of love and adoration and gratitude for your father mixed up with this insidious doubt and suspicion, and do you let him know and risk ruining your relationship in order to achieve the answer to your curiosity and your doubt and this obligation you feel to your mother? What do you do in that situation? So I thought it would be so interesting to take these complex characters where he has done some good things and she does love him for those good things, and yet she remembers this night where her mother went missing and it just doesn't quite ring true that she walked off. So did her mother fail them? Did she leave with another guy? Did he murder her? We don't know as the story develops. So it's not thrillerish like this one, but there is a mystery that runs through it, and it's more women's fiction, I would say.
So there's no romance in it?
Oh, absolutely, there's romance. There's always romance in my books. I love to have a love interest and develop that. No, so there's a good love interest in there as well. At least I hope it's good.
That's great. I cannot wait. When does that come out?
That's December 4th.
December 4th, okay.
Yeah, so just 3 more months, and we'll have the second release of the year. Yeah, and then we have Silver Springs again after that. So I'm doing the suspense, and I'm doing the women's fiction, and then I'm going back to the contemporary, small-town contemporary romance. So.
That's great. How many books do you have out a year?
I do 3 a year usually, and last year we had 5. Somehow it just fell that way. So we got very lucky with releases, which it cost us a little this year. We only have 2 for this year because we had such a big release schedule last year.
Oh. Yeah, no, this is, I cannot wait. That sounds absolutely fabulous.
Oh, good.
And I think we have to, I'm not sure, do we have time? We do not, we're out of time, but I did have so many questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, I probably talked too much. I always do.
No, this was fabulous because I wanted to talk to you about just that, about, the series and do you plan it all out when you start out and then just dole out emotional satisfaction per book?
Actually, I wish I could plot the way some people do and know it all in advance. But to me, I am just a very transparent person, and if I know the answer, you know the answer. So, I somehow leak it out in my books. All the emotional tension is gone, so I can't know. I have to keep myself in the dark and then discover each day, let the plot grow out of the characters so that I'm also surprised. And ironically enough, you would think that would cause a lot of rewriting, and it never has. So I just am a big supporter of follow whatever journey is best for you, whatever process, whatever method. I just heard a talk when I was at the Police Writers Academy from a fabulous writer. I'm trying to think of his name, and it's eluding me. But he did a great job with his talk. But one tenet was that you must plot, you know. And I was sitting there thinking, oh, this is making me feel terribly inadequate because I can't plot ahead of time or it ruins my book. So it convinced me even more, like everybody's got their own method, and if it works for you, you need to stick with it.
Yeah. Oh, well, this was fabulous. Again, everybody, face off from page 1. You will not be able to put this book down. So
Thank you.
So be sure to have time set aside to read it. Thank you so much for being here, Brenda.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry I was late.
This went too fast. Oh, not at all. This was really fabulous. Again, this is $7.99 St. Martin's Press, Face Off, and you can order it on authorsvoice.net, and it will be signed by Brenda for you. If you're watching this after the show, you can still go to authorsvoice.net and order signed copies. So please do that so we can keep doing these shows for you. Thank you again, Brenda, for being here. And I'm going to take us out with upcoming shows, which are on Berta's Books. Author Rebecca Mackay will join our own Roberta Rubin on September 12th at 3 p.m. to discuss The Great Believers, one of the year's most beloved books. Join us then. Lady Bird and Friends returns with host Betsy Bird to talk to author Sean Rubin to discuss his book, Bolivar. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but please come back for that on September 13th at 5 p.m. On Stranger Than Fiction, author Ace Smith comes to discuss One Wild Year of Baseball in The Pitcher and the Dictator, with host Bjorn Skaptason. I think I'm saying that wrong too. And that's September 14th at 3 p.m. The next Lit with Love is on September 27th at 2 p.m. with the very amazing Suzanne Brockman and her son, Jason Gaffney, and Kevin, who is one of the protagonists of the movie of her book. And it's going to be an interesting episode because we're going to have 3 guests this time. So please come back for that, September 27th.
And Suzanne is so dynamic.
She is amazing.
She's wonderful.
If you haven't heard her RWA speech yet, please go ahead and hear that because it was a barn burner and it was fabulous. Again, Brenda, thank you so much
Thank you for having me.
This is Sonali Dev signing off. Thank you for being here.